Says we're live here. Welcome, guys. This is a pretty fun stream. We're continuing on with the MCU Spider-Man. That's the Marvel Spider-Man stuff. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, so forgive my scratchy voice here. What we're doing here is a test mask, a lot like this test mask right here. And what the purpose of that is to get to this final dye sublimation pattern, to get it looking really nice, and you can tell that all the seams are really flat and there are no wrinkles or anything like that. You need to do a lot of test work and stuff before you can get to that. Here's a test of the material for what we're going to have going for MCU pattern. This is a material I got from my friend Fernando Alfett, as you guys probably know him. He does a lot of Deadpool stuff, so this is actually Deadpool stuff. So of course Spider-Man would get material from his buddy Deadpool. That would be a pretty funny comic. Yeah, so basically all I'm going to do in this stream is I'm going to go through the process of getting a test pattern that I designed. It's this pattern right here. Ooh, look, you can see the pattern and take it and everything. Don't really care. But this is a test pattern that I've been designing in Photoshop. So if you actually want to watch me design this pattern from scratch, you can go back and watch live streams that I've done in the past. There we go. It's hard for me to see comments when they're right in front of my face like this. Also, sorry if the camera jiggles a lot and it makes you sick or anything. I actually smoothed out the last video that I did like this. That's funny, second person. That's pretty funny. Okay, so basically, I'm just going to be starting out with transferring this just printed out on a printer paper design onto the fabric I've got right here, which is just standard spandex, red spandex. And you can do it on anything. You could do it on white or whatever spandex you have. Sometimes you even have enough excess white in a print to be able to do test stuff like this. But I like to do red because then you can kind of see how everything is going to look once it's all finished. What this is sitting on right now, this is my super cheap homemade light box. As you can tell, it's just Christmas lights and is that tinfoil? Yeah, that's tinfoil that's covered in plastic or tape or something to keep it from making contact with the Christmas lights. Super sketchy, I mean, obviously, but I never leave it on or anything, and it works for what I use it for. So just plug in the Christmas lights here, and then it's really easy to just put your pattern down and then be able to trace everything through the fabric like that. Before I do that, though, one tip I want to give you is sometimes you'll notice that your fabric is like wrinkly from sitting in a bag, or maybe it's wrinkly from being shipped or something. One easy thing you can do, just take a spray gun like this. Flatten your stuff out on the floor, on some carpet, and just get it wet with a spray bottle. And then once you've gotten it pretty evenly soaked, start to like stretch it out and pull it out, because that's what those wrinkles are. They're kind of dried filaments that have dried in the position they were in, and so you get them wet and pull them out, and it makes them lay flat again. Degsy asked if I have enough material for a full suit. Yeah, I do, I think. I don't have any blue material, though. So I'm pretty sure that the first suit, the way I'll design it is as a dye sublimation suit, not a suit done like this. Maybe down the line, but I am going to do a mask like this. So while I let that dry, I'm going to go ahead and do the back portion here. I also decided, since the last stream, this part is really tiny and there really doesn't need to be two of them, and this is also the back of the bottom of the mask. And so I want to get rid of this bit of the seam right here because that's just going to be another aspect that kind of sticks out and is harder to deal with. So I can start the seam a little higher up here, and then I don't have to deal with any kind of a seam sticking out of the bottom of the mask. I've never done Miles Morales. I've never done a Miles Morales suit. I've come close a couple of times, but the project's just never really panned out. I've never really done any kind of custom comic stuff. I'd love to, but I never sit down and actually get the full thing done, or the project usually falls apart or something like that. Okay. So I just use a Sharpie here because this is a test mask. It's not too terribly important. Oop, dropped it. That's great. That's why you don't work with Spider-Man gloves on, probably. Yeah, just try your best to match the lines underneath. Keep everything nice and still. Sometimes if you're working on like a bigger piece, like a leg piece, you might need to like tape the fabric to the pattern piece because you'll have to move it around a couple of times. Oh, that sucks. Chris said that his 3D printer broke. Sucks to hear. But that's the good thing about 3D printers is they're usually just a sum of their parts, unless like the frame breaks or something. You can usually just get the new parts. I needed to get new bearings for mine because they kind of were locked, the ones that I got from the factory. Yeah, I just noticed Twisted. I imagine you asked about dyeing lenses. Yeah, since they're urethane lenses, it's really easy to dye urethane. And I just do that, and then you don't have to worry about paint scratching or just the whole process of painting in general. That's kind of one of my secrets with lenses and stuff. And then the key is that you just have to have a perfectly glossy lens that you make your mold around. And once you've done that, every single lens that comes out of the mold will be glossy too until the mold goes bad. Okay, so I've got that half. Now I just need to flip it over because this is a light table. Also, light tables are sort of expensive. That's why I've never just gone out and gotten one. They can be over $100 just for a tiny one, like even a smaller space than this. If you don't have one and if you don't want to build one, if you have a glass tables actually work pretty well. Like anything like a coffee table or a kitchen table or a patio table, as long as it's glass, you just set like a lamp or something up underneath it, and then you get the same thing that I've got right here, where you can see through your material. Unfortunately, this method doesn't really work on like black materials. Like if your material is so dark that you can't see light through it, you have to do other methods to like get your design over, like transfer papers, or you can make stencils and stuff. But that's why I stick to like red and lighter fabrics so I can just trace easily. That's too bad. I just read that Chris Moore, that your printer heated bed went out. Yeah, I struggle with my heated bed. My heated bed doesn't get quite hot enough, and that can kind of be a struggle. Both my extruder and my heated bed don't get quite hot enough, so I kind of have to mess around with the temperature settings so that the printer will actually start. And sometimes I have to, set the temperature higher because my extruder and heat bed are so cheap that they're just very bad at maintaining their temperature, which is pretty funny. So do I seem totally crazy wearing Spider-Man gloves, working on Spider-Man stuff? That's gotta seem at least a little crazy, right? To someone new to the situation. Okay, so there, the back is done. Front's probably not even like close to dry yet, but whatever. I consider these test masks. You know, they're very, very much tests. You know, they're not. If you make mistakes or things go off center, it doesn't really matter. I basically have a box of these things, and that they're good later on when you're testing something else. You're testing a new lens type or a prototype. You can go back and find these masks in that box of masks I just mentioned, and you can like use it to figure out your new project. I did that last year when I first started on the moving lenses. Which, mentioning the moving lenses, that's why I'm working on this stuff right now. I'm excited to actually get a version of that done in the next, week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I'm not sure, because the priority right now is people's face shells. But I'm still going to keep working through this process until I get to a new moving lens set. And I'll finish a set first, so that I have it to talk to you about and make sure that the second version actually works and stuff. So I'm not just teaching you how to make something that doesn't work. But I'll get that done, and then, yeah, it'll be really exciting to finally, because you guys ask about like 3 times a day. Maybe not the same people, but people in general ask about 3 times a day about how to make that still. Really fast, I'm going to grab some magnets, because these spots right here, those are actually magnets. Oh, you can see this one that I taped on the underside here of the plastic, and with that, it allows me to magnetize the material to the board. My magnets are out here because of face shell work. My crazy house. So I applied the YouTube smoothing effect to the last video that was done in first person. I think it smooths it out a little bit, but it's also really weird. It kind of makes all the motion really weird looking, but it's also really jerky without it, so who knows? I say that and jerk the camera. Cool, Evil. Thanks for checking in. It's fun. Got a lot of people hanging out right now. It's nice. Feel free to, sign into your Google account and say hi. And if you have questions and stuff, I can also answer those for you. Although right now I'm kind of a little distracted by mask work and the phone in my face. Okay, I need to move it over a little bit. I put these dots on either side. Those signify the middle, because I just cut out a large circle of fabric. Good question, Jonathan. Jonathan just asked if I'd consider posting the list of like who's currently waiting for shells. Maybe someday I'll post that, but unfortunately I'm just in this position where I'm still, I'm behind. I have, like a dozen orders still left to go that I'm working through, but I've got my garage set up. You just saw me walk through there. I've got my garage set up, and I got a lot of good shell work done this week. But the order of the list is a little weird right now. There are just it's complicated because there are people that I promised shells to, and I sold them prints like around 2 years ago. And then there were also my Patreon subscribers that the shells were basically a reward for a certain pledge amount. And I've since removed that because it just didn't work. It caused a bunch of like priority issues, basically. So that's kind of my problem with the list. Is there are a lot of people that expect that they're next, which is basically what I'm getting at. And it's kind of a problem because when they see that they're not next, they kind of get into the list and they kind of, they want to know what, the specifics of it. And so I basically end up having to explain the situation to everyone. So basically I'd have to like do a list also explaining why, the it's basically like I had two priority lists that kind of got shuffled together. Basically, the people that had ordered prints in the Patreon group, and so that's a lot of why it's taken a long time too. It's just kind of been a car crash, sort of like two decks of cards that have just been shuffled together. So that's kind of the problem with that. But I'm close to catching up with it. So maybe in the future, once it gets a little more organized, and it's not just because I won't ever be doing as much construction. I don't think I'm never going to be doing as much hand making of each order again, because that's obviously just never worked for me. So yeah, so that's kind of why I'm not going to do that. But hopefully I'll be through it relatively soon here, because that's my top priority. I'll just also be doing this, that this is a priority as well. All right, and I'm just getting all these lines off of the pattern. Yeah, Evil, I just read your question about what's the best glue to put on a face shell. Hot glue. Hot glue is good for a couple of things, but for the most part, I don't really like it. Super glue is probably my favorite glue. Basically, just the type of super glue that you get in a little bottle or a little squeezable pouch. That is typically the most versatile type of glue as far as strength and amount of time it takes. But basically, your glues are going to depend a lot on what you're doing. There are a lot of glues that are really good, like E6000, because if you're wanting something that's really impact resistant, you're going to want something like more like a silicone glue, which hot glue is actually pretty good for too. But that's a little more impact resistant. But then super glue is just great. For my lenses and stuff, everything that I glue together, I just use super glue because it's fast, it's pretty easy to control, and it's really strong most of the time. Okay, so keep going. And the key about, I'm just mentioning super glue, that it's good most of the time, is it's also, it's not the strongest glue in the world, but that's kind of necessary, because if it was too strong, sometimes you do make mistakes and you have to pull things apart. And if it was too strong and permanent, like an epoxy or something, you'd be just done at that point. A rare moment of silence from me. I look back at these streams, and I'm basically just always talking. It's like a podcast. Podcast / how I make things, sort of. But I like it. I really like these streams so far. It's just fun. I'm having a lot of fun thinking of the different things, different topics I want to cover. I'll build up to moving lenses and stuff. And I'm excited because, I have a few projects that I want to work on in the future once, face shells and then MCU stuff is all finished. I want to work on some different types of projects. I also want to kind of like take votes from you guys in the comments. Like if there's some project you think you'd like to see me tackle, if you leave a comment, I won't promise to do whatever you leave in the comments, but if there are enough requests for something, I'd definitely consider it. Because I definitely really like working on new stuff. Working on the same thing over and over is kind of like my kryptonite. I mean, all of us. I mean, who isn't? That's just work, essentially. Oop. That's why you don't use a pen when you're wearing Spider-Man gloves, I think. And I'm putting all these details on here, the thickness of the web gap, because I need to see ultimately if I have the right thickness in my Photoshop file, or if maybe it's a little too thick, or it looks pretty good right now. You can't go too thin. But the other thing is, once the mask goes on, it might get stretched out a little bit, so maybe they do need to be made a little thinner. Oh yeah. Paul just asked if I've ever had like smearing, staining with puff paint when I was first working with it. Oh yeah, definitely. When I first started working with it several years ago, because that was one of the things people would do dye sublimated suits and then puff paint. Like I know Spidey for Fun did that back when the Raimi movies came out. But I was doing one after Spider-Man 3 had come out. And yeah, I had just puff painted a full mask, and it was sitting on a mannequin head, drying. And my friend was working on a project in my dorm room because I was in college, and he grabbed the top of the mask while the paint was all wet and smeared it. And oh my gosh, it was like the first mask I'd ever actually successfully sewn together. I was so I just freaked out because it was like such a final thing. Like it's you don't realize how stressful this kind of work can be with, oh wow, that whole suit that I was working on, the puff paint just got smeared and it ruined the entire suit. Like, great. That's really, really great. That's high stress work. I think, a lot of this stuff is high stress work, where it's just like it's do or die, make or break the suit. And that can kind of be unfun stuff too. So that's one of the things about these face shells, is that they can be stressful and a little monotonous, which is difficult. But yeah, sell a kit and then you guys can just put it together yourselves. And I've got these streams to show you how to do it. And you can ask questions. Laurent just asked about the ASM-1 Spidey suit. No, they definitely did not puff paint. They did screen printing. They did actually what, if you watch the movie, when Peter is designing and making the suit in his basement, he actually does screen printing. He actually screen prints the suit. So they were kind of true to that. They tried to figure out the most logical way a teenager could actually make a superhero suit look the quality of a movie superhero costume in his basement or garage or bedroom or something. And this is kind of the reality of that, but because screen printing is hard. I mean, Aunt May would know something was up. Screen printing stinks. There's a lot of chemicals involved. He probably wouldn't get away with that unless he pretended he had like a t-shirt business he was working on. That's why the Raimi movie did the best job. They just ignored it. They ignored the idea that, he made the costume. It's like he designs it and then in the next scene he has it. It's so funny. It's like, oh, well, yep, I'm going to have this costume now. Here's the design it will have. And here it is. It has super awesome metal webbing and stuff. I found this. I thought that's really funny. But it's just a perfect way to handle it because you don't have to think about it. Yeah, Paul, that's too bad. Paul just mentioned that he had a suit that got stained right before a Comic-Con, and you managed to do it battle damaged. Yeah, that's why I try to do most of my puff painting and stuff flat, like this. I don't like to do it on the suit, like when it's already sewn together, because that's a lot of high stress too. At least if it's flat like this and you mess up, you could conceivably get new pieces. I've had a lot of people in the past that have had stuff happen, and it takes me forever to actually accommodate them and get them replacement stuff. But eventually I do, and they get their suit. These suits are definitely waiting games. I still have a suit to be finished up in my sitting under my bed so that it doesn't just collect a bunch of dust. Because it needs a lot of puff painting, and I just never want to puff paint again, really. It's funny. I've made a black symbiote Spider-Man suit a couple times. When I've done that, though, I've done it with a special kind of spandex that has the material already on it. It's pretty easy to find. It's just like a sequin spandex. I think that's what it's called, like sequin spandex, or foil spandex, maybe like foil dot spandex. Basically, it's just a spandex that has like a sort of plastic dot design on it, and that's what I used for my symbiote suit, because it looked all wet and it looked like it had the brick pattern. And I remember I was lucky because I knew about a fabric store in Dallas that had it, called a Golden Dior. That's a pretty famous fabric store in Dallas that the ladies in the costume shop at the SMU theater, because I went to SMU for theater in Dallas, and they knew about Golden Dior, and so I went over there and found that fabric. And so a lot of people in those days were very much like, oh, where'd you get that fabric? It has the wet look of the symbiote suit. And it basically, I mean, that symbiote suit from Spider-Man 3 just had raised brick texture. They probably just screen printed that one too. But I still have a bunch of that fabric. That's how I made my Venom suit too. I just used that fabric and then puff paint. I just used a lot of puff paint to make the Venom suit have the kind of like wet, slick look that it has. It was really successful. Just read the question, do you plan on doing the Sam Raimi Spider-Man costume ever? Maybe. I mean, maybe if someday I'm a little more in the collector mindset. Right now, I'm collecting masks, sort of. Like I'm making masks and then collecting those, but I don't really have a great desire to have those different suit varieties and stuff. And also, they've been done really well. That's kind of, I'd say, more of what draws me to a project, when it's like something that hasn't really been done and is more of a thing to figure out, like a game, a new puzzle. Someone just asked, how long does it take to put together a suit? It really depends. If you're not doing any dye sublimation, it can only be a matter of weeks. You can put together a suit in like 3 or 4 weeks, from pattern designing to what I'm doing right here. Because if you weren't doing dye sublimation, this is basically the final step before sewing the suit together. And then you just sew it together with some blue fabric. This is like the traditional comic book Spider-Man suit. This is what, not this dye sublimation, more interesting on film and stuff, but this is what Spider-Man would look like. He'd just be red spandex and Sharpie, I think. Because if you were wearing this and like swinging through the city and fighting criminals and fighting supervillains, you'd be going through probably 2 of these a week, 2 or 3 a week. You probably need like a tissue box filled with them. Pull out a new one every time there's a new disaster. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Kind of reading comments. Every time I look up and I get lost in thought, I'm trying to kind of catch up with the train of comments. Because I don't want to pass anyone by, so I try to read up a little bit and see which ones I have missed. Thanks, D-Row. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Yeah, getting more viewers today. It's a neat Saturday stream. Feel free to chime in with if you're working on something. Maybe even not if you're working on it right now. If you're working on some project. Eventually, I'd like to do a stream where I actually kind of just focus on the stuff you guys are working on. I've talked about that before, but I kind of forgot about it. If you haven't noticed by now, I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. I'll talk about something and then it'll never come up again. That only occasionally happens though, right? Right? Are you talking about the one that looks like Scarlet Spider? I just noticed the comment of, would you do the homemade version? I think it's cool what you guys out there are doing with the homemade version. Like, it's funny because that's like right up your guys' alley for a lot of you, because it's a hoodie, it's a set of lenses that you have to do, but it's still it's a mask. I actually I want to work on an interpretation of Iron Spider that I thought of a few years ago, like 2 years ago. I posted some images that I had made of it, but I still want to do that really badly, and I also want to kind of incorporate some stuff from the MCU movies based on that, like change around the lenses, maybe give him some glowing lenses with moving gold frames. I think that'd be pretty cool, pretty slick. But yeah, that would be a fun thing to do during this stream. Okay, so I'm almost finished here with this is just about the most arduous part of this process. Even the sewing takes less time than this, I think. Just getting everything transferred over. I'd love an inkjet printer that could just print right onto spandex, but that's basically dye sublimation. And it takes a lot longer than this. It'll take days or weeks, and it's expensive. You have to have a certain size order usually. So, although this is labor intensive, it's very fast. I actually don't even really need to be doing this other half of the mask. I'm just kind of doing it for the sake of the stream, but I only really need to look at half of it. Oh, that'll be cool, Chris. Yeah, the homemade. Chris just mentioned that he's doing a practical iris on the homemade lenses, which are round, which has a lot more open up to the actual iris movement, the movement of a camera, or just an iris in general, where it can rotate and close. The lenses that I do don't do that. They don't have any rotation to them because there's not enough space, and it's a really obscure shape. Basically, your nose makes the whole moving lenses thing very complicated because your nose is right next to the whole apparatus. So you have to really just design it in such a fine amount of detail. Either that or have it sticking up off your face a little. Like I think the guy that has his moving lenses in Hong Kong, I think he has a big advantage in the fact that most, I don't want to be like racist or anything, but most Asian people that I've seen that like either wear my face shells or wear masks, their head sizes is usually way smaller. And so like if you've ever seen Joe Lai wear a suit, sometimes it looks like a watermelon on a toothpick a little bit. And, I think that's kind of an advantage in the moving lenses department if you're doing actual mechanics and stuff. Like if I tried to put servos and stuff inside of a face shell with my head, it would look like an alien. It would I'd have to make it so large in order for my actual head to fit inside. So it's kind of funny. I think they kind of have an advantage in that aspect. Okay, so here's the front part of the mask now. I'm going to take my scissors and just go ahead and clean up around the edges a little bit. And I usually cut pretty close up into darts because usually a dart, the fabric direction and stuff changes so much that you need to cut right up in there. You can't cut too far or else it gets difficult to sew it together. Action Jackson, he just asked how many suits I've made. Quite a few. I've been making suits since Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man. I just am bad about taking pictures of my work. Like I don't have many pictures of the early things I sewed together, the early Spider-Man stuff. There's some stuff on my Instagram account. That's kind of my best concise, some of the cooler things I've made over the years. Because I rarely actually get to that like finish line where I have a finished suit that I can do like a photo shoot with. But it happens sometimes. I think it'll happen more in the future with this stream. Because even Harvey Birdman, which I did about a week ago, it only took me a week to get to a pretty finished result that I could show everyone. Oh, I totally forgot. I want to tell everyone, Monster Palooza is going on right now. You guys, if you follow Ironhead on Twitter, they have a booth at Monster Palooza again. They had one last year too, and there's a famous tested video interviewing Jose there, and so that's in Pasadena. So I'm thinking I'll probably go down there tomorrow, and I might start up a live stream while I'm there. Be cool to walk over to, just to go through the whole Monster Palooza would be really cool. And interview like different people there on what they do and the different things they make. But yeah, if I could get up to Ironhead and do a live stream from there, I think everyone would think that would be pretty cool. Be a chance for everyone else to see it too. Spider-Man just asked about shell sale stuff, and yeah, like you said, I'm backed up on shells. For anyone out there who wants to buy this, I've in the past I've taken orders for kits and stuff, and I'm still super backed up on those orders, and so I'm sort of hesitant to take orders in that way like ever again. So order status is kind of like in flux. I'm doing 3D printing stuff right now, and then also potentially kit stuff that will be how you do orders in the future. Aside from doing, me sitting and making every one of them, or I'm also thinking of getting other people licensed and not licensed because I don't, all that blah blah blah. But other people who make face shells, like little companies out there that make face shells and lenses. Maybe I could get them sort of making my brand of face shell and lenses, and then that allows me to focus on making more varieties of lenses and things, and then it would get out there a lot faster. And so back to sewing. That's my little blurb about face shells. Back to sewing. What I'm going to do now is I'm switching over the sewing machine, and this is heavy duty polyester, double polyester thread, and this allows you to sew from. This allows you to sew spandex from a standard sewing machine without getting, your thread breaking constantly. This stuff is so super strong. It doesn't matter too much because of this test thread or test stream or test mask. There we go. Test mask. And, it doesn't matter too much. But basically, I'm going to go through the whole process here of just getting it onto the sewing machine. And also this. It's going to be really interesting attempting to sew here with gloves. The gloves might have to come off for the sewing. They were neat for the marking aspect of the print. Yeah, if you're new to my streams, I've done a lot of different things already. I've only been doing these for about a month, but I've done a lot of different things. I've done vacuum forming, I've done casting lenses, I've done trimming lenses, so lots and lots of stuff. So you can go back to my channel on YouTube and check out those archive streams. And then also you can subscribe so that when I stream in the future, you'll get a little notice. I try to stream on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then once on the weekend. But I'm thinking that I'll probably do it more often because this method here is really easy, as long as it's not too sickening for everyone to watch. All right. Oh no, my top thread is almost out. I've got more though. It's not in there. Yep, it's hard to do this with gloves. Pretty funny. But yeah, I wanted to wear these too because, these are all just the techniques I use to make stuff like these gloves. So it's kind of fitting that I would wear them. I'm so close to out of thread up there. I need to go get a new bunch. Say hi to Will, everyone. Will's working on sound editing.
What's up, everybody? Enjoy.
Okay. Now that all done shaking around there. Might have been something I could have checked before, but it doesn't really matter. Your thread color or type isn't as important in something like this. Yeah, I've got blue and black. I could use black. This polyester thread is a little more expensive. That's part of why I figure, sometimes things like snags, those are just going to kind of happen, especially as they get older. They're just going to kind of wear over time. Hopefully they're not too noticeable. I guess you would notice a snag, especially if it was on like a, not blue, if it was on a white spandex Spider-Man suit. You could always color it with like a fabric pen to match the color that it used to be. Another quick little note, I've mentioned this in a previous stream. When you're sewing spandex with just a standard sewing machine, you want to use a ballpoint sewing needle as opposed to a standard, sharp sewing needle, because a sharp sewing needle will tear through spandex, and a ballpoint pushes instead. Kind of pushes all of the fiber up to the side. Wow, I was lucky. Well, there you go. Threaded a machine with gloves, with Spider-Man gloves. I bet Spider-Man has had to do this at some point. Probably broke into like a costume shop in New York to sew something. Okay, so when you're sewing a mask together like this, it's kind of just a matter of oh, that's too bad. It sucks. Yeah, that's one of the stressful things about these costumes. They're so hard to fix and repair little things because it's not like it's not like a car where you could take it to the auto body shop and take a dent out. You basically just have to get a new suit. It's really, really difficult. That was in reference to Chris. He's got about his snag on his suit. Julian asked, "Since when am I a fan of Spider-Man?" I've been a fan of Spider-Man ever since I was really little. My cousin was a big fan of Spider-Man, and so whenever I'd go over to his house, I'd see all of his like Spider-Man and X-Men toys, and this was in the '90s, and a heyday for both of those franchises. So I always loved going over there and seeing that stuff. Okay, so what I'll do first. Because basically, when you're putting together a suit, it's a puzzle of, you've got darts. I've got these 2 darts under the chin. I've got these 2 darts that come out on the side of the head. I've got this dart in the middle here, and then the back, sews to the front. So basically, I need the back and this front part sewn together because this dart contains that, if you think about it. This dart on the side has that material up on that side, so you have to have that assembled already. So you have to think about things like that, like where to start and what to assemble first. So you really have to plan it out in advance. When you use pins, well, you can use other things to get things lined up, but I just use pins because it's easy to do. And again, it's a test suit, so it doesn't need to be perfect. Yeah, if you go to my website, madebymclean.com, some people are commenting, "Oh, I wish you sold suits." I do sell the files for prints and stuff, so you can print out like this suit that I'm wearing right now. That file is up on my sell-fi page, but you can find it on my website, madebymclean.com. But yeah, so you can see that stuff there, and I'm trying to organize more and more in that way. But I just like to focus on the making stuff rather than the turning it into a business aspect, and that's kind of hard. One key when you're sewing spandex, I just went forward and backward to give it a little bar tack. One thing when you're sewing spandex like this is you've got to put the stretch into it if you're not sewing with a stretch stitch. You got to kind of pull against it. Oh, and this is good. So this dart just goes right off the edge of the fabric. One thing that you might think, oh, it's too thin to really get a good bar tack in there and solidify your seam. I learned this from a costume shop in Utah when I went and visited 3 years ago. You just sew off the edge. So I just sewed off the edge of that dart. And now you can see, it's kind of helpful that I used red and black thread here. It was accidental, but it'll help to demonstrate this. So you can see those red and black threads twisted up there. And I just sewed right off the edge. What you can do is separate those threads. I'm just poking up in the middle here so that they're not twisted together anymore. Come on, there we go. Come on. Did I get it? Yep, yep. There we go. Okay. So once you have these two threads just kind of separated here like this, you can actually just kind of pretend you're finishing up some stitches here and tie them together like this. And now that dart, I just sewed straight off the edge of the fabric and then tied the two threads together. I'll want to tie them again just to make it a little more secure. Whatever knot, gets these really well and secure. And that makes a really, fine dart. Not one that won't like stick up and be awkward. It just kind of goes from seam to nothing. That beats the heck out of most people's ability to do a dart, where they usually have a point or something poking out. Yep, Chris gets it. Chris is spread my brand name. Made by McLean. Made by McLean. 100 years, made by McLean. 9 more seasons, made by McLean. Until I get that Szechuan sauce. Okay, so now since I've got this back piece sewn together, and I could sew it again, or I could put it through the serger to put an even better seam on it. But since this is just a test mask, I don't really care about going over it and making it really strong. I just want to have it finished so I can look at whether or not the pattern is good enough. That's basically the only purpose of this right now, is to see when everything is put together. Because otherwise, if you don't do something like this, you're just guessing. You're guessing all the way through the process and hoping that everything will be better. And if you just do this, you save yourself a lot as far as having to just redo stuff over and over and over and have, 6 different variations of your print, because every time there's some new little error that you don't catch until it's all done. Okay. That part's a little difficult, wearing gloves. And I'm just pinning each, web segment where the webs align on the front and the back. That helps to keep everything really well aligned. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is kind of a bigger crowd than usual. I appreciate anyone watching, because I just enjoy this. I really enjoy having this archived on YouTube, really, because each of these streams that I've done over this last month, I've done about 16 or 17 streams now, and it's just a ton of content, and also it'll be on YouTube for a long time. People will be able to just search it and look at it. And then someday I'll start editing together the shorter, more condensed tutorial versions that cut out a lot of the middle parts like this, or maybe speed it up. But yeah, I think it'll be really exciting once I get to the moving lenses portion, because I just need to get this mask done so that I can move forward to the moving portion, the moving lenses. Because when you do the moving lenses shell, you basically have to assemble the mask with the rest of the components, like the lens components and the shell. It needs to be glued in with all of that to make it look nice and smooth and flat. All right, and I always want to keep an eye on the bottom, especially when you've got one line that goes one way and another line underneath that goes another. You're going to have your spandex fighting to wrinkle up. And a lot of times that wrinkling happens underneath where you can't see it. So you kind of just get a sixth sense of, like, you'll know when your spandex is flat. And if it's wrinkling underneath, you'll feel it, and then you'll know that you're about to sew together a bunch of spandex where you don't want it. And I take the pins out before I go over them with the sewing machine, because there's a chance that you'll hit them with your sewing machine needle, and that just kind of makes it wear out faster. It also might ruin your pin. I'm going to bar tack a little bit right here over the middle seam just to get a little bit more strength. And that's just going forward and backward, because that kind of, the thread sews through itself and ties itself into a knot, essentially. And you might have noticed I was well on the inside of that seam line there. I didn't get close to the edge there very much, because I knew I was I strayed away pretty far. But it's better to be on the inside of your seam lines always than it is to be on the outside. You always want to be on the inside, because then when you open it up, you don't see those lines. You don't see any lines or anything. It still all just looks really nice and clean. And it's spandex, so it stretches. The centimeter of lost material maybe is not too big of an issue. Whereas if you sew on the outside and the seams are visible, that's kind of the more noticeable and ugly thing. It's kind of already taken the shape of a head here in the back. I'll be curious to see how this mask turns out. It might not look good. I'm kind of guessing with a lot of the shapes and stuff, so we'll see how this thing actually looks. So, same process, just go ahead and trim the back here. It wasn't perfect. I accidentally, 2 of the webs weren't lined up. If this was an actual mask, I would have taken a lot more time to make sure everything was lined up. And if it hadn't been lined up, like the way it kind of is right now, I would rip out this line of thread I had just put in, because that's something that is another advantage of this method of sewing. If you just put one line of thread in, you just start ripping it out thread by thread, and you can kind of just take your pieces apart, and then you have a chance to do it again. Okay, so I've sewn those 2 components together. So now this mask is one piece, and it has 4 remaining darts. It has these darts on the chin, and then the 2 that run along the side. So I'm going to go ahead and get the chin darts finished, and then the 2 remaining darts will be the last thing I do. I'll start from the bottom of the middle on this one. That way I can sew off on the dart on the chin. I missed your comment, Degsy. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I do play video games. I'm pretty excited about that PS4 one. I hope it can kind of get back to the glory days of Spider-Man video games, when you just be swinging around New York and doing different things, because that's the most fun stuff about Spider-Man. Like helping kids get their lost balloons. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, the more curve there is to the line, the more pins you want to put in there, because that's the only thing putting it together. You're basically hand sewing it together with pins to start out with, and you couldn't wear it like this. It holds it together the way you need it to, and you couldn't wear it, but then you just sew over the pins. And that is pinning 101. If you have never heard of a pin before. All right. Oh no, I lost my thread. Sometimes if you don't have enough excess behind the needle, you trim too close to the needle. The machine sucks it out. All right. Oh no, did I just tie a knot? sleeves. I don't know how that happened. There we go. All right. So yeah, I'm snagging. We talked about snagging earlier. I'm snagging the fingers on this thing like crazy, but I really don't. I don't mind. I think it's like battle damage. It's like any other suit you do. Spider-Man would have battle damage. It's just that his battle damage just looks kind of worn down and trashy. All right, and I'm bar tacking this seam a lot because it's going to be the bottom of the neck, so it's going to have a lot of pressure put on it. I could probably thread a needle with my eyes closed at this point. Degsy just said this has to be fake. You can't thread a needle with gloves on like that. I have been getting pretty lucky here. But yeah, I've done that so many times that I think I could do it with my eyes closed. And also, another advantage of this polyester thread, it can be kind of difficult to thread it because it's thicker, but it is thicker, so it's easier to kind of push it through the needle hole. First, I'm going to check the seam and make sure everything lines up and came out pretty well. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That shouldn't be too bad of a, point, because that's going to be right about where the chin is at. So I guess it's going to be right underneath the chin. That's the kind of stuff that you have to worry about, though, is that, that might end up being a point and look kind of awkward. In which case, I'll just kind of have to maybe reevaluate my pattern a little bit. Maybe kind of do something a little closer to what they did in the movie. Because that's typically who I'll look at a lot, is the actual movie suits. Because they're the ones who are the most successful usually at, bringing it into reality. And they have to go through all the little puzzles to get there. And so you just look at their work and kind of see how they figured out their little things. All right. Get that seam allowance trimmed down a little bit. Almost there. 3 more seams and 2 eye holes to cut, and then I'll be able to put this thing on the mannequin head and see how everything looks. I'm excited because I really need to get a test mask of this done. I want to get it done with the raised material. That way I can have that ready for the moving lenses, which I know everyone's pretty excited about. I'm excited about them too. I regret not having just kind of kept going on that last year. I got really, really distracted with ASM2 and orders and stuff. Life kind of gets in the way sometimes. Which I don't want to say that at all, that those orders got in the way or anything. Those guys have been so awesome and so patient that ordered those masks. Yeah, I kind of missed the moving lenses train, unfortunately, which is a little sad. But whatever, it'll still be a kind of a feather in my cap going forward later on, because I also have some other projects, kind of, that I'm working on every 2 weeks or so that I'm really excited about. It's going to be really cool. And it'll actually have some, I'm thinking of some ways to incorporate it with Spider-Man a little bit, since that's where a lot of my fan base are. So, yeah, that's super broad. I know that's not a lot of information, but it'll be really cool, and it's going to happen soon-ish. Okay, I got a little off on that one, but that's fine. This could be an example of how I show you how to undo what you've done. Yeah, so I got way off on that one. I kind of just let it get taken off course. So, look at it, make sure. Yeah, it's a little too far in. Although maybe that is what I might want ultimately. Oh, no, see, it's because it's making a point up there. So yeah, this is an example of, okay, that seam was no good. Let's try again. I always have super fine pointed tweezers. You can also use a seam ripper, which is just like a little hook doing exactly what I'm doing right now that goes through. So I'm just cutting occasional little links and then cutting their corresponding links on the other side. And that frees up the rope, because it's two different pieces of thread. It's not just one thread going up and down through the whole thing. See, it let me just pull those threads out because they're cut now. And then I stretch it a little bit, and now, because it's cut, the thread will pull through the holes a little bit, and you'll have a very easy to see thread to pull on. And so now basically you can see that they're still looped together, because that's the point here, is that it's two threads strung together, keeping the fabric together, but I'm able to just pull them apart. But you have to kind of keep going through and occasionally snipping links in order to actually get that out. I'm not going to go all the way down because it's pretty good down at the bottom. All right. Yeah, I apologize again for my super raspy voice. I have a head cold as of about a week, so hopefully that'll go away eventually. Plus, I just sit here and talk for like an hour and a half, so that makes my voice a little raspy too. Chris asked what the cheapest international shipping method is. Probably U.S. Postal Service. For me, I ship U.S. Postal Service and then ship to other countries. It sucks because you typically have to do registered mail, which can get expensive. But that's kind of the safest way. That's how you ensure that it gets there. But that's still cheaper than like FedEx and stuff usually. Hey Al, yes, you are awesome. Because you said so. Degsy asked if there's ever been a project that I've wanted to do but couldn't do. Oh yeah, absolutely. There have definitely been projects that I've wanted to do, and the biggest thing is like, the reality of the situation. Just if you want to do like a big, like one time I wanted to do a like robotic mech suit from the Matrix, and that was like back when I was first getting into costume making, because you kind of don't know your own limitations at that point. So I wanted to make a big mech suit from the Matrix, but it was just so hard, and I made parts of it, but it was like expensive and hard, and the reality kind of sets in. So that can be a lot of times where you meet failures, when your expectations are so high and there's just no way to meet them at that point. So it's, there are a lot of projects like that. And then also another thing that can sabotage projects is, you start to learn different techniques and things, and then you think like, oh man, I can learn anything. And you really can learn anything. But at the same time, there are certain things that are not as easy to learn, like, and teach yourself to do as you might think. And I've run into a lot of that with like computer stuff. Like I thought I was gonna like make like CG movies and stuff back when I was younger, but you start to work on a project and realize how much work goes into every aspect of a big project like that, and learning every aspect of a program. And so I've had projects like that have kind of fallen apart. But I have done animation projects before that have been successful and are just tiny little things on my YouTube page. But I like animation a lot. I think that's a lot of fun. And I hope maybe someday I might move back towards that kind of stuff. I want to work on stuff like that in the future. Okay. Laurent asking Laurent just asked if screen printing the whole ASM1 suit would save you time. That's a complicated question because yes, it would if you have a big screen printing company and are able to do that very quickly. But if you don't, then no. Your best bet's just going to be puff painting because screen printing is a really involved process. It's not the easiest thing to just pick up for someone to just do in their garage. It's possible, but it takes a bit of investment in learning and stuff. So that's why I think puff painting is actually a good solution for people who don't want to, invest in all of the screen printing and everything like that. Instead, you spend the time that you would be spending making a screen printing operation, just doing the puff painting, and then you can, you'll be done. And unless that's what you want to do, if you want to make a screen printing company, go for it. It's a very possible thing to do. I'll probably eventually do some puff painting on the stream at some point. Yeah, you guys are talking about Rick and Morty. Yeah, I love Rick and Morty. It's a great show. I think it's so funny that they just released the new season without any warning or anything. That's just such a funny thing. Of course, they would do that. All right, and once again, I'm moving along and just matching the web segments together, as well as sometimes, like right now, I'm matching the web segment up with a seam, because sometimes that's what it correlates with. It was okay. And going back to the fact that this is a test mask, since this is like a test mask and I'm kind of making notes, sometimes things won't go together perfectly. Like there will be web segments that, you have to kind of awkwardly move everything to line them up. And so it's helpful if you're figuring out your pattern to have like a notepad or something with you, and you can kind of like write a note, or like I have the actual pattern outline over there. You can take that and put your notes on that, and then you can like write your notes next to the specific parts of the pattern that you need to change. Like if a web segment needs to move up or down a little bit. Because, you're going to be changing things, so you might as well change anything that is, bad or inconvenient at all. And I'm putting extra pins in this curve that goes around the ear, because it's hard to get these curves to line up perfectly with one another. So the more pins you put in, the better. I just stretch from both the front and the pin before and the pin behind, and that lines the lines up pretty well. Because I want to see this one in pretty high detail. I want to make this one look good so that I know that it can look good, essentially. Thanks, Al. Al just said I'm truly his bud. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are here and hanging out. It's always a fun crowd for these streams. Even if I don't always, acknowledge you guys. Sometimes I get a little distracted with what I'm working on. Okay. Oops. Sometimes these machines, they can hate spandex because spandex can get kind of jammed up inside of the workings, or in this case, just a bunch of excess thread. But that happens. I mean, this is one of the things that happens more frequently to someone who's new to sewing. Because a lot of what just happened was because of this cycle. This cycle got interrupted a little bit of the silver head up here coming down and lifting the thread up, and then the needle goes down. I kind of interrupted that a little bit and moved it a little over. So now I'm paying for it here. Okay, for the most part it was good though. Okay, just making sure everything's flat, everything's stretched out. Yeah, this sewing is the main reason why I wanted to do the POV here. Hello, Brazil. LF. Thanks for tuning in. And someday I'm going to enable the option that you guys can help me out and actually translate past streams, or at least portions of them. That would help me out a lot, so I can communicate with a bigger audience. But I'm still just a month into all this. This stream is just a little baby month-year-old. 1 month old. Month-year-old. Yeah, it's just a little baby 1 month old. Okay, so continuing on here. Hello, Brazil. There you go. I don't know if I said it before. I'll say it again. All right. All right, almost done here. I'm excited to see how all this looks put together. One more seam, pretty much, as long as this one turned out well. Yeah, that looks good. A little wavy, but that's kind of one of the things that happens when you do a machine regular sewing machine, sewing these masks together. You get a little bit of that waviness when it goes, slack. But then once it's designed, the way it's designed to be on the mask, it doesn't go wavy anymore. And then also with the puff paint and all the details and everything, that can kind of lay it down as well. Okay, so really fast, I'm going to go ahead and trim this excess around the edges. Okay, I want to make sure that you don't accidentally cut through and actually slice some of the mask. That'd be bad. All right, so time for the other side. And then this mask is done, other than the eye holes. One more seam. It's always ideal to have an easy, simple mask to sew together. Not too many intricate little darts and things like that. The ideal suit would kind of just be one knit human-shaped thing, sort of like a water balloon, designed to just kind of be filled up. Oops, I pinned it to my finger. I'm kind of surprised there isn't any sort of knitting technology where a garment is knit around maybe like a steel base or a steel frame of a person's form, and then the entire garment is sort of knit like a sweater would be knit, just as like spandex or some other material up around the form. Degsy, serging seams is not just as easy as this. Serging, I should get into serging here soon, because serging is kind of the next level up above this, and it's higher quality. I've always struggled with serging a little bit, to be honest, because you need a good serger, and that can be a little hard because a good serger is going to be more expensive. And a cheap serger kind of is basically just like a fancy sewing machine like this one, that can cut the fabric and also sew, but it just doesn't make a very high quality stitch and stuff. I have two sergers. One's a little nicer than the other, but I still am just not. I've always used sewing machines like this, so I've just kind of, this is the way it works for me. Okay, Al, these will be your eye holes. I'll put these eye holes aside for you. I think you're referencing probably the eye hole man from Rick and Morty, but yeah, you can have these eye holes. Hi, guys. Got people saying hi. Yeah, come on. These curves can be so difficult. When the fabric, one curve is going this way and the other curve is kind of going the other way. So it's just difficult to, force them to line up, especially while I'm wearing gloves. I think that might be my problem right here. These gloves. I think it's kind of impressive that I've sewn an entire Spider-Man mask together while wearing Spider-Man gloves. It's kind of difficult. But I enjoy a challenge, so. Silent Gamer just asked where did I learn to do this? I've always kind of been interested in this stuff. I've made, like you guys, I've been interested in, like, I made a Boba Fett costume in middle school, and then I did Jango Fett and General Grievous. I did a lot of Star Wars stuff early on. And then I moved over to Spider-Man when the Sam Raimi movies were coming out because they were so cool. Because, seriously, that Sam Raimi Spider-Man costume is still one of the coolest with the metal webs and stuff. It's just such a cool aesthetic that it has. You don't even really know what the webs are, but they kind of seem like armor. So I've always thought that was the coolest kind of a suit aesthetic. And that got me a lot into this stuff, as well as I think a lot of other people, because they just did such a good job designing that suit with like the texture on it. Like it had a texture sort of like this one. Oh, thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. I can't really take a look at it right now, but I'll take a look at it eventually. Yeah, because once I finish sewing this together, I think the stream will probably be complete. I don't think there's anything else really for me to cover, but it'll be pretty exciting that I'll have a finished mask by the end of this stream. Because a lot of people teach you how to do something. Even some kind of more official people, they'll teach you how to do stuff, and then they'll never show you the stuff that they're doing, the finished product. I've always thought that was annoying and frustrating. That's why this part right here, this is why I like to have the dart that I'm starting on be where I end, because then it's easy to sew off and make a nice looking dart. But sometimes, like right now, just for the sake of lining up the seam, I'm starting up on this edge, so I kind of have to just do it. But this is where, last time I had a problem too. You're sewing into such a thin amount of fabric right here that it pushes the fabric into the machine and then it jams everything up, so it can really be annoying. And if you look right here, I'm actually using the knob to start the stitch because that gives you just even more control. You can just rotate it to get your stitch going. Whereas sometimes you can stomp on your foot pedal and accidentally put in too many stitches, and that's what pounds it into that little opening in the plate. All right, looks good. Didn't get stuck. And this part I'm sewing right now is actually, I think, still inside of where the lens is. So it actually ultimately gets cut off. Won't even be here. Oh, I love the Andrew Garfield Tobey Maguire debate. I think that's funny. I honestly didn't like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man very much, but I don't think that was his fault. I think it was just the fact that Sony produced those movies. I mean, Sony produced the first ones too, but Sony's just been going off the deep end, I think, with some of their choices over the years. That's why I'm not particularly excited about the whole Venom project, because I don't know. Sony's just probably excited about all the Spider-Man buzz and wants to make a buck off of it. I probably shouldn't badmouth them in my stream, but I think they're a big problem with like the last few Spider-Man movies. I mean, I think Spider-Man's an easy property to get right. I think it's easy to make a fun, enjoyable Spider-Man movie. Even Spider-Man 3, it had its problems, but it still was like a fun, enjoyable Spider-Man movie. And then the last two were very like somber and serious and just constantly trying to establish this bigger world that they just didn't really like earn. And the second one I really didn't like. That whole first beginning segment that felt like a James Bond opening segment with the plane and stuff. Like, it's important to the story, but it just didn't really feel like Spider-Man to me. That's not a Spider-Man story I would have chosen to tell with so many other great ones out there. It just seemed like they were trying to turn Spider-Man into Batman or something. Yeah, Chris, I'm surprised I haven't sewn the glove to the mask yet. And I just got to the end of the last seam, so I don't think it's going to happen. Sorry. All right. So now it's a mask. Now it has a mask shape. Oh, and perfect timing. My phone battery's dying. I've got a backup that will set me up with, but yeah, I think this will be perfect timing. And even if it does die, I've basically gotten to the end here. So that was a pretty fun, concise little stream. Not as much filler or random stuff going on, just kind of start to finish. Because that's what I'm trying to get to. If I'm too random with these streams and I kind of do like 5 hours of streaming and I do a million things per stream, it doesn't really serve anyone as much as if I am more concise and pick a topic and see it through. Okay. All right, I'm gonna end the stream now so that you guys, we can maybe look at that, but I guess not. Just kidding. We'll put it on. Put it on the face shell mask here. And I'm using an ASM1 face shell as my base. I'm actually going to 3D print a new design. That's probably what the next couple of streams are going to be about, is me designing the face shell for MCU in the computer and then getting it printed. Oh yeah, I need that. So, let's see how that all turned out. Oh yeah, I don't have eye holes yet, but that's okay. It's going to be good or it's going to be bad? Good or bad? Good or bad? Well, that's okay. A lot of that eye wrinkle could be probably calmed down when you put the lenses on. But that just means that's something that I've got to deal with, that wrinkling right there. Everything else looks pretty okay. Seams are still a little wrinkly. Maybe I still need to reduce the chin part a little bit more. Where's my lens template? Oh, there it is. So I can kind of put a lens on there and get an idea, a bit of an idea, what that might look like. And without the bottom neck portion, it might be just not pulling as much as it would otherwise. We'll see. Yeah, like that. Yeah, it's not quite pulling. It's pulling too much in the front, essentially. It's almost like I need a seam in the back that would pull it equally in the back. Or maybe I just need to reassess my design here. But yeah, that's pretty much... oh, geez. My phone almost fell out. Yeah, pretty much got it here. The next step would be me actually putting it on myself, and then that's a good indicator, because my head's a little bit bigger than the mannequin head. Pretty much, this mannequin head is about as small as a person's head will get. That's a big part of why I use it, to make sure that things are, they work for someone with a smaller head. Sorry, I got distracted there. Sometimes I lose my train of thought. MCM just asked if I make my own ASM1 lenses. I use those sunglass lenses that you can get, or you used to be able to get, from costume stores. You can still find them out there, but they're getting harder and harder to find, because that's from a movie that came out 5 years ago now. And they're not really Spider-Man-y otherwise, because they're gold lenses. And that's kind of the only time, other than in the 70s, there was a TV show where he had reflective lenses. Okay, I always start out cutting just really tiny little eye holes. Those are really, really tiny little eye holes, because you don't want to cut just giant eye holes, because then you might accidentally cut too far. We'll ignore what I just said. We might accidentally cut too far and cut outside of the shape of the lenses. And so you want to do a little tiny snip for an eye hole, and then you can cut it larger after you've tried it on and seen how everything looks. So okay. Oh, there are your comments, guys. Woo. Okay. I'm putting the mask on really quick, putting the face shell on.
Oops. All right. Alright, yeah, this thing's sliding all around here. But it looks, looks pretty good. There would be a taller hood piece here underneath. Yeah, it looks pretty good. There are a couple things that probably need to change. But the seams look pretty tight. You can't really see the seams down here under the chin. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I think that's going to work for the moving lenses and everything. All right, cool.
I need a haircut. My hair looks a little raggedy, but yeah. So that was the making a mask pattern basically from start to finish. It fits pretty well. I think I need more happening up on the back here. It's not pulling it down far enough on my head. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go down another segment of webbing or something down on the bottom. But yeah, so that's awesome, guys. That was just a nice little hour-and-a-half stream to show you how you go about taking a Photoshop file that you're kind of working on and making a wearable test mask that can be, shows you the information. Because if I were to show you this first one compared to the first one, this one is much better. It doesn't look great sitting right here because it's not being pulled tight, but yeah, it's already a much larger improvement. Oh, you probably can't hear me very well. I'm a lot farther away this time. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. And there will be more MCU stuff that's going to be coming up in the next few weeks because that's the reason why I was getting this mask done in the first place. We'll do some moving lenses and actually go in depth into that material or that process and what goes into that. So thanks for checking this out. You can go to my website if you want to see the few things I have up for sale right now. There will be more coming soon as far as 3D printing and things like that. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys later.